Wagwan, hey, you multifamily maniacs. Welcome to another episode of the Multifamily Real Estate Experiment podcast. Look, we tell you that season 3 is going to be a freaking hit. And we tell you that season 3, we want to focus on our military veterans and our transition process. Today, I have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jason Murray, our Sergeant Major Jason Murray. Now, what is cool about this man is that his position of responsibility. He's responsible for over 4,600 sergeant major in the Army and the professional development to include their transition from the Army. See, Jason have served over 29 years in the Army as an Army intelligence and have promoted himself with the support of his team to the rank of sergeant major. Now, after 29 years, he's looking to transition to be with his family and have made significant sacrifice over the years. And today we're going to dive into what that look like and how to, we'll ask the question today, how do you overcome fear and anxiety when transitioning from military to civilian life, right? So welcome, Mr. Jason.
Thank you, Hutch. Appreciate it.
So before we dive deep into, are you starting the Army and your journey, do you have a favorite quote or mantra that drives you?
Yes, I do. It's a quote from Theodore Roosevelt. It captures, in essence, a lot of what we do in the military, and it continues to inspire me on a daily basis. The quote is, "Nothing in the world is worth having or worth doing unless it means effort, pain, difficulty. I have never in my life envied a human being who led an easy life. I have envied a great many people who led difficult lives and led them well."
Oh man, that's some hard stuff, man. That challenges a lot of societal thinking in a world where
Right.
we want instant gratification, and some of us will stop at the first sign of struggle. We hear the quotes about, we hear the story about the folks who stop 3 feet from gold, and he'll talk about this guy who went into the mountains of Colorado and he was digging for gold, found gold. He had the necessary equipment, but he also didn't have the stick-to-itiveness to go 3 feet deeper. And he
Yeah.
stopped 3 feet from goal. And then somebody who had the experience, who knew that there's a fault line, went in and continued that mission and did not quit and became significantly wealthy. Also, a great mentor of ours, a lot of us, Tony Robbins, talks about success is right outside of our comfort zone. You know what I mean?
Right.
So a lot of the things that we need, that we want to achieve, especially if it's big and audacious goal, it takes some working towards. So that's an
Yeah.
amazing quote. Amazing quote.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So, Sergeant Major, is it cool to call you Jason going forward?
Oh yeah. Call me Jason. Yes.
All right, for sure. Hey, Jason. So, 29 years in the Army, man. Can you give us a little bit of, first, what was your childhood like that gets you to even making the first step towards joining the Army?
Yeah. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. I grew up in a kind of probably lower middle class family on the east side of Houston, very poor area. And predominantly, I was like the only white kid around, predominantly Black and Asian neighborhoods that I grew up in. And my family didn't really look at the military as an option. It wasn't like we hated the military, but we didn't really think, oh, the Army, that's a great way to go. The last people to serve in the military in my family was my grandfather. He served during the Korean War, and that was it. But I grew up and didn't really have any direction in my life. I was very rebellious against my parents. I wanted my own way. Found myself at one point in time living out of my car as a 18, 19-year-old. And I had always thought about the military. And then one day I was driving by one of those recruiting centers, the ones that have the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines all together. And you walk in one door and it's like offices off to the side. And I walked in there and actually tried to join the Marines. And I was homeschooled growing up back in a time when it was weird to be homeschooled. And I went into the Marines. I sat down and talked with the recruiter and everything. And he said, yeah, you don't have a high school diploma or a GED, so we're not going to be able to take you. And after about an hour of talking back and forth with him and understanding the plan, I walked out and walked over to the Navy recruiter, and they told me the same thing. And then I left that one, and I was going to go to the bathroom real quick. I remember specifically, hey, where's your bathroom at? I'm going to go to the bathroom. And as I was walking to the bathroom, the Army recruiter stuck his head out and says, hey, when you get back from the latrine, come talk to me. And so I guess he was watching me go from one to another. And so I walked out of the bathroom, now I call it a latrine, right? Because it's not a bathroom anymore,
Yeah.
right? the head for you guys. And I walked out and he said, sit down. And I gave him my story. And about 3 hours later, I was signed into the late entry program. He's like, yeah,
All
we'll
right.
take just nothing but a waiver that we have to get and everything. Took the ASVAB. And that was in 1995. I joined the Army as a electronic warfare, military intelligence professional. I went to basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, went out to Fort Huachuca where I did my advanced training, my AIT, and then was in an aviation unit for a while and sent overseas to Korea. I got married in 1998 to my wife now, and 26 years almost that we've been going at this. She's been with me on my whole way. My greatest supporter has been my wife. And so that's how I came to the military. I had a short break in service between 2000 and 2001. Right after 9/11 happened, I came back in the Army. So that short break in service, I came back in, same thing. And then transitioned to special operations, which I did for quite a while. Learned a lot doing special things, obviously. Very unique world, a lot of deployments. And when I came back in the Army after my break in service, my wife at the time, she decided to join the Army as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So she joined the Army and spent about 8.5 years in the Army. We went to Fort Bragg, now called Fort Liberty. And that's where we spent most of our career. That's where she spent almost all of hers, except for a few deployments for her and a lot of deployments for me. So, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Quite a journey there, man. And one of the things that we see in the military is that a lot of us, we have this amazing vision of our inner strength and how we can put that to good use, right? Now, one of the things that I'm thinking about is that you joined the Army without finishing high school, it seems. And I had this conversation with my son recently because he's in the second year of high school, but
Right.
we're trying to push him through. But he
Right.
seemed to have a different vision of him being a athlete, playing volleyball overseas and different things. And we pushing him towards that. But we'll keep pushing him until he's no longer in high school.
Right.
That goes to show that who you are and the contribution that you can make to society is not defined by a high school diploma. What's your thoughts
Right.
about that?
Yeah. I agree. I won't try to shade anything and say that I'm not an exception because I believe I am an exception to the rule in society, right? Because our society, American culture, they look at things like the high school diploma or the GED as your gateways to becoming an adult. Now, again, I was homeschooled, wasn't given a formal education like going to high school or middle school or things like that. And I never got the piece of paper, right? But it never deterred me. I did not know that was a required piece of paper to be successful. So it wasn't something that I hung on my wall to say, look, I've achieved this. And now that I've achieved this, I'm going to go for that. I just continued to pursue excellence. And that wasn't something that came easy though, right?
Yeah.
Again, going back to the quote from Theodore Roosevelt, I lived a difficult life in the Army and was challenged because of I didn't achieve a high school diploma. As a matter of fact, just this past year, last summer, I just finally received my bachelor's degree from University of Maryland.
Awesome.
But I still have no high school diploma or GED. And some would say, how did you do it? I did have some great mentors growing up in the military. I had some people who saw in me potential and they instilled in me a level of perseverance, a desire and drive to pursue excellence that I didn't let something like not having a diploma slow me down. Unfortunately, our society continues to look at graduating from high school as a mark on the wall. I will say this, education is important. It is probably one of the premier things that we need our youth in today's American society to pursue. But just having a diploma doesn't mean that you're going to be successful. There has to be a drive, both internal to you and some method of understanding discipline, habit, routine that gets you to that. Every person who we esteem as a great person has had somebody to help them along, to help coach them, to help train them, to help show them. As a father myself, I point the way for my son and my daughter. And you as a father yourself, you do the same. At some point in time, though, I'm not going to be there. And I'm hoping that the things that I've instilled in them, a desire to succeed, to not quit, to persevere, to have endurance, to know that things are going to get hard, they're going to be obstacles. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to put left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. And so that's how I got to where I'm at today. I just didn't let anybody say, nope, you can't do that because you don't have that piece of paper. And I was like, okay, I'll find a way.
That is awesome. So looking at that concept, right? So the difference between a diploma. So we have seen people who graduate from high school, graduate from college, and is not able to transfer that formal education into the civilian world. But you, like myself, I value education, right? So our kids are required to get A's and B's, right? And
Right.
anytime they stay away from that, then it's our responsibility to give them that rudder steer, because society puts so much emphasis on having that piece of documentation. But we also let them understand some of the key values that are important, additional to having that piece of paper for a diploma, right? But also the diploma does not define you as does not define the value that you can bring to society. So that's
Right.
awesome. Now, so in your early journey in the army, what is one of the things you appreciated most as a young soldier?
So early on in my Army career, I was given the opportunity to be part of an honor guard
Okay.
for a year. And I conducted funeral burials, flag detail, things like that. And I had he's now one of my great mentors and friends, but was my first really squad leader and platoon sergeant, who taught me the discipline to be a soldier.
Okay.
And I will say that to become a soldier, to become a Marine, a sailor, an airman, or a guardian, or a coast guardsman, it's a process. Just because you've graduated basic training, yeah, we give you the mark soldier, but soldierization is a process. It takes time to instill certain facets of our profession into a person, right?
Yes.
And this man, Glenn Rodney, he retired, if I'm not mistaken, in 2018. He retired as a sergeant major. He took special interest in me, and I was, if you will, a project for him. And he instilled in me such a level of discipline, not just to just the standards, but to my own internal motivation that said that this is what's going to drive you forward. And I still look back on those days. I have pictures that hang on my wall of my time in the honor guard, of dressed up in a uniform, presenting a flag, doing a burial detail for a family, and the level of scrutiny and visibility that is on you during that time means that you have to have the utmost discipline for every move you make, for every step you take. Everything that you do is under scrutiny. And I look back on that as setting me on the right path to where I'm at today. I can attribute everything that I have achieved in the Army from that seminal point in my career. It was right there that I said, this is for me. And that was about 2.5 years in the Army, right?
Wow.
I was at that point in time where I said, this is for me. I can do this. And not just I can do this, I want to do this.
Oh man, so I've never got an opportunity to serve on a funeral detail, but I can imagine the emotional connection you must feel with those family for every single flag that you pass off to a spouse or a parent or a sibling, right? And that sounded like before you got married and before you start having children, right?
Yep, it was. Yes.
Yeah. Now, fast forwarding a little bit as you start building your family, right? What is that? What are some of those lessons you take away from those burial details, and how do you transition that into be a better father and a better husband?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Look at the better husband. I understand that I live a life of service, right? Not just in the uniform,
Right.
but as a husband, my entire purpose is to serve my family, to serve my wife. And I don't mean hand and foot servant, like providing the opportunity for my family to be the best it can be. And that means monetarily, that means through purpose for what our family is here for. And I instill in my children a sense of service. And even though they're young, 9 years old and 6 years old, I still instill in them and teach them that as humans, we should serve other people. There is no greater purpose, I believe, in us as humans than it is to serve those around us
Yeah.
and to provide for those who don't have, right? And my wife is on board with this. She's actually my greatest supporter when it comes to how we're going to lead our family. And so I attribute the early days in my Army career of understanding what service is, right? Being there for people, helping people who are down and out, being there for neighbors when they're going through hard times, being there for family. All of that is instilled from me in the Army. I didn't necessarily learn that from my family growing up. That doesn't mean, again, I had role models, but it was nothing like what the military instilled in me. So
That is good stuff, man. I appreciate that. So throughout your career, having a family in the military is a challenging process, right?
right.
And I've served with a plethora of Marines, probably thousands of Marines who have made a decision not to have a family while they're on
Yeah.
active duty. What do you say to that?
I think that comes down to time. Let's talk about how much time there is in a day, right? There's 24 hours in a day.
Mhm.
Just because I'm a sergeant major in the Army and I have a family and 2 children doesn't mean I get more time, right? I tell NCOs all the time, younger NCOs, those that have just become sergeant and staff sergeant, the only difference between you and me is I just serve more people. So it really comes down to time management.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to say anything about somebody's choice to have a family or not. That's their own personal desire. It is not easy to have a family while you're in the military. Your family has to be on board with this sacrifice that's being made. And I say quite often that my family has sacrificed more than I ever will sacrifice. The friends that they've given up, the places that we've moved, the amount of things that have been broken through each military move, the amount of times that my wife has had to uproot herself from the community that she has established with her friends to move to another one. Now, there is a plus side to that. And the plus side is that we have friends all over the world that I could fly to almost any country that there are soldiers stationed, and I could guarantee you I could knock on a door and be with friends today, right? So that's the plus side. But having a family in the military isn't easy. You know as well as I do that the level of divorce and split up families in the military is higher than it is in the civilian world. And a lot of it is due to, I would say, diverging purposes. I've counseled soldiers many times who have said, my wife says, or my husband says that we're not going to do this anymore unless I get out of the Army, but I don't want to get out of the Army. And I said, we have to make a choice, and choices have consequences, right? And at some point in time, you're either going to have to choose that you want to stay and do the Army, or you're going to have to choose and stay with your family.
Yeah.
And that's a choice. And so all I try to do is help them come to the choice that they want to make.
Facts.
Right. That's it. I'm not going to tell them what they should do or shouldn't do.
Mhm.
I'm going to ask probing questions. I'm going to say, hey, what do you feel about this? Do you want your family to be there when you get out of the Army? And for some people, that may be ending the uniform sooner than others. It may not make it to retirement. A lot of soldiers, especially these days, don't get to retirement like they did back 15, 20 years ago. So we see a problem with retention. And one of the big problems we have with retention is military families and the support that the military service provides military families, the support that the military service provides that military member for their families. I am an advocate for military families. I care about military families to such a point that if I can't take care of your family, what am I asking you to do? If your family is taken care of, you'll do just about anything in the world,
100%.
right? Yeah. And I don't discount people's thoughts on should I have a family or not while I'm in the military. If you can and you want to try it out, go for it. But I will tell you, there's a lot. It's hard. This is not an easy path. And I also tell people, communicate often with your family. Tell them what's next, right? And involve them in the decisions you're making. Here's a good story. A really good friend of mine, we were stationed together in Germany. We get back to the States. He gets stationed at Fort Bragg. This is probably 2017. I go to Fort Bragg, TDY, and I sit down and have lunch with him. His name is Jimmy. We're sitting down having lunch, and he goes, hey, man, I'm going to go to Ranger School. And I'm training right now to go to Ranger School, and I'm so excited about it. And I'm listening to him, and we're having lunch, and we're talking about it. And I said, hey, Melody's pregnant, right? He said, yeah, man, this is our third baby. So excited. was like, have you talked to her about you going to Ranger school? No, I'm just going to go and come back. I was like, the time that you're planning on going to Ranger school, she's going to be giving birth, right? Yeah, she'll be fine. I was like, Jimmy, just go talk to your wife and just have a conversation with her. And he called me about a week later and he goes, hey, Jason, how you doing? I said, great. Jimmy, what's going on? He said, I ain't going to Ranger school. I was like, really? He goes, yeah, I'm so glad I talked to my wife because I don't think she would have been here if I would have gone to Ranger school. And I just say, have a conversation, talk to people. Now he still wants to go to Ranger school, but things like that, when you have a family, you have to plan those kind of things unless you don't want them to be there. And that's a different conversation.
Yeah, to your point, in the Marine Corps, we started off at the foundation, right? Because as when you build a building, the foundation is the strongest part you need to have. And
Right.
one of the things that we have in our command is it's not really mandatory, so it's more of a requirement, but our command to go through the process to ensure that our Marines and sailors get opportunity to sit down with someone to talk about the processes and some of these commitments that we have to make on a daily, weekly, monthly, and also on a yearly basis to make sure that before they get married, and the program is called Before I Say I Do, and they go through the process, so they create a better understanding, and they also understand some different checkpoints that they need to come back and talk to a counselor, talk to a chaplain about the decision that they're making, and ensure that that decision is consistent with keeping their family together. Because look,
Yeah.
the sacrifices is necessary sometime, right? And sometimes some people are better separated, right? And when they come back together, it's dated
Yeah.
all over again and get all excited about a relationship. But that doesn't
Yeah.
work for some people, right? Some
Right.
people need that daily connection where if their spouse is gone for a very long time, it could mean that the relationship is or slowly could deteriorate or come to an end. You know what I
Right.
mean? Everyone, to your point, to reach their own as far as knowing who they are, knowing who their partners are, and make sure that they have a common goal and are willing to make the sacrifice to the level of commitment that's required to stay in this professional gun club for the
Yeah.
longevity.
Honest conversations. It requires honest conversations. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Definitely does. What I like about you, the way you put it though, as far as moving around the world, 16 times, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
for you? Oh
That's
man,
right.
man, that is some struggle. But when you think about the network that you can create, but for you
Yes.
and your spouse and also for your children in school, right? They get to create a vast network. And I talk to my children about the same thing as well, right? Look, there's going to be maybe 3 to 5 friends that you want to stay in connection with. And if you
Right.
think about 5 or 6 moves, that's just a solid group of core friends that you
Right.
have around the world. Also, it eliminate their fear of getting up after college and moving to a location, to a new location that they have never been to, because they have lived that life to where they can go into a new environment and they can thrive. So that does create that level of resilience for our children. But I think our spouses are the ones who sacrifice the most, especially
Right.
those who have the traditional in the office job and career. They definitely put a lot of sacrifice in. So even though they get to build a good network of friends, most places they go, they have to start over their job. It's
That's
unfortunate
true.
sometimes. To your point, we have to be able to have these hard conversations with our spouse to make sure that every single commitment that we are making jointly is we all understand what it's going to take to actually keep the family together while also serving that mission. Jason, you have a key responsibility towards Sergeant Major, over 4,600 of them to be
Right.
to mention, over 4,600 of them. This podcast is about eliminate fear and anxiety. In your experience, what are some of the key actions that our senior leaders can take to ensure that they and their family can transition from after 20 plus years of military to a civilian life or successful civilian life?
Yeah. So I would say probably the number one thing, and this is something that I've learned in the past 2 years, have a plan.
Okay.
Right. You need to happen to your retirement. You don't want your retirement to happen to you. The uniform ends for all of us. Don't pick any military service. Everybody will come out of uniform. Right. And how that happens is up to you. Now, as a senior NCO in the Army, I have the again, I have less days in front of me than I do behind me. And because of that, I need to focus on what's next. Have a purpose that's outside of the military. And that fear and that anxiety comes from a couple of things. A loss of identity, right? Because I won't lie, part of my identity is wrapped up in the uniform, right? I've been doing this for the majority of my adult life, and I've worn the same thing every single day. I was just talking to a friend of mine last week saying, at some point in time, I'm going to have to get up and pick out a shirt and pair of pants every day. That's different. That's not the same. Because right now I go and pick up a uniform and I put it on. I don't have to worry about it. Put on the same boots every single day to go to work and do what I do. So have a plan. And that plan should involve your family. And that plan should involve your network. Again, one of the greatest things that we have in the military is we have people that have gone before us. Pick any major gateway or milestone in the military, and there is somebody that's gone there before you. And utilize them as a mentor. Reach out to them. Those people that, one of the things that's greatly helped me is my network of people that have gone before me. I have so many friends that I have reached out to and just had a call like this, either through email, a phone call, and I said, hey, what was something that you wish you would have known? What is something that you forgot about? What should I know about, right? And they will, again, as a servant, they are more than willing to just spend some time and say, here's what I did. Here's where I went wrong. Here's something you need to watch out for. And it's whether it's transitioning into another job, right? Whether it's a VA disability claim, whether it's educational benefits, whether it's where you're going to live, whether it's what do you want to do, right? And that's the biggest thing is what do you want to do? When you're in the military service, you're told what you want to do. Somebody tells you, this is what you're going to do. And you're like, okay, I'm going to go do that, right? Yeah. Now it's up to you. That is in of itself is where the fear comes from, because people don't know what they want to do. And identifying that, understanding what that is, and then building that as a plan to move forward is key. Some people are like, I don't know what I want to do, right? Now, I'll be honest and say that the level of retirement that I'll have will insulate me a little bit. I don't necessarily have to go out and do anything, right? I will have an income to take care of me and my family. But I think for those of us who've served this long, and even some people that have served less than 20 years, they have been instilled a sense of purpose. And that sense of purpose is to do something, to serve. When you leave the military service, sometimes there's nobody telling you what to do and you don't know how to find that out. Right? I think that's where a lot of the fear and trepidation and anxiety comes from.
All right. At your level, at the Resource Command, what are some of those tools that the Army gives, for example, the senior enlisted, to ensure that the transition process is predictable or somewhat predictable?
So we have the Transition Assistance Program, right? Okay. Soldier for Life. We call it Soldier for Life TAP, SFL TAP. It's a program that at any point in time in your career, you can go to it. Okay. You do not have to be transitioning out of the military. You can go when you get to your first duty station as a soldier, you can say, I want to go to SFL TAP, right? And I want to understand what that means, right? Because again, I spoke on it earlier. How long does it take us to make a soldier, to make a Marine? It generally is longer than basic combat training, right? Mm-hmm. It's longer than your advanced training, right? Soldierization is a process that takes several years. We should also expect that process to become a civilian should take several years. Yeah. It shouldn't just be 5 days going through a class and say, okay, magically you're a civilian, ta-da. No. So I tell people, start sooner. Understand what that is, what that transition looks like for you, right? And build a plan, right? I don't think the transition program that the Army has is enough, but the onus, the obligation, the duty is on the soldier to figure out what enough is, right? And there are many programs that exist out there, nonprofit programs. I myself am in a nonprofit program that has helped me transition, right, out of the Army. The Special Operators Transition Foundation, SOTF, it's a phenomenal program where you apply to it. It's a lot like the Honor Foundation or the Commit Foundation. It's a program that gets you prepared for life after the military. And I will tell you, like I said a minute ago, the biggest thing they help you figure out is, what's your purpose? What do you want to do? And then they'll help you find that purpose. They'll help you find that drive. We've been in the military long enough to be disciplined to drive ourselves, to move from point A to point B, and then point C, and then point D. They're going to help me build that plan. And I will tell you, if you're not, let me go back. You should be preparing to transition all the time. Not just when you submit your retirement paperwork. No, all the time, right? Always be preparing to transition.
That's a good one.
You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
And then when it happens and you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
But some people think, I don't have to worry about that until I retire. And then they drop their retirement paperwork request and it gets approved and they've got 1 year to retire. 1 year is not enough time, especially if you've been doing this for 29 years.
Yep.
1 year is not enough time, right? To get everything in order. Finances, where you're going to live, what you're going to do when you get out, all that kind of stuff. And some people think it's just going to be magic. Okay, I'm going to walk through the door and there it is, ta-da. And then you see them, floundering, reaching, grabbing, you're right. And then it's our network. It's the network of other veterans that comes out and says, let me help you.
Yes.
And I think that's something that people, so again, be transitioning all the time, mentally.
Yeah. So great points. I want to pick out two of them that one, I never really thought about that process before, is that in the Marine Corps, you go through basic training, we call it boot camp.
Yep.
And after that, we have what's called sustaining the transformation, right? So it's a continuous evolution of the Marine, right? So we keep making that Marine, and each promotion comes with a different level of growth and responsibility. But I never really thought about how do you transition that Marine into a civilian, or the
Right.
soldier into a civilian, even though we want to keep a lot of those transferable qualities and skills, but also it's a different mindset that's required to be a Marine and also civilian. A slight shift has to be made. But to your point, one of the things that we see, and I take it to the most extreme and on a better side, is some folks will leave the military, and the significant loss of purpose and focus will lead them down a path to
Yep.
where it's not a good path. And it's really good that we have some resources out there that can help people to get back on the right path. But you also have some who they get out, they make some mistakes, and they reach back, and now they're paying it forward to others who are transitioning. One of the topic you talk about was financing. How
Mhm.
important is finance? How important is having a solid finance to the transition process?
Extremely. And we do not do a good job in the military preparing people for finances. We live on a fixed income per rank, right? I'm an E9 and I won't get paid anymore. I've been a sergeant major for over 10 years now, and I haven't gotten a pay raise except for the annual pay raise that we come with the National Defense Authorization Act. That's it. So there's no more promotions for me. There are positional promotions, but financially, I don't get any more money. Okay. And we do not do a good job of discussing finances in the military. At least in my career, there hasn't been a lot of emphasis focused on investments, savings. You'll get the average 1 hour block of instruction, maybe 1 month. If you're in a certain organization, they may bring in a guest speaker to talk about life insurance or what financial programs you can benefit from, whether it's a 401k or whether it's the TSP or whether it's this type of savings plan. We don't get any of that stuff. And unfortunately, because we live on a fixed income, generally paycheck to paycheck, we figure when we get out of the Army, oh, it's just going to happen. I'll be fine. And we don't realize that it's not that way, right? There's a lot more that goes into understanding financial readiness
Yep.
and financial capabilities than just paycheck to paycheck. Now, when I get out, I will have a retirement and potentially a disability check on top of that. If I want to do something else, I'm going to have to work for it. And then what I do with that money, the cost of healthcare for my family, the cost of education for my family, for my children, all of these things. Now, there are veterans benefits, but let's say those weren't there. If those weren't there, are you prepared for those things?
Right.
So a lot of things that I do when I go around talking to soldiers is especially junior soldiers, E5s, E6s, is I talk about financial readiness. I tell them about being prepared. Again, the mental mindset should be, I should be preparing to transition all the time.
Yes.
And what does that look like? So it is. And I think that's something that we do a disservice to our service members on.
You're correct. So preparing to transition all the time, it definitely creates more options for us and our families, right? I was sitting down with my career planner.
Right.
I had a new career
Yeah.
planner that my commander checked in several months ago. And my specific guidance to him was anyone that come to your office, whether they're on the path to re-enlisting or the path to getting out. You're doing an interview with them. I need for you to ask them this one question, right? What is it that you want eventually? That question has to be asked every single person. The reason for that is it gets them thinking long-term down the road. And to your point, is that we're always preparing for a transitioning, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, or 20 plus years. So what is it that we want eventually? And then backward plan where we are now and how we're going to get there. So that's important. Of course, money doesn't buy happiness, but you never seen a sad person on a jet ski, right?
Oh.
So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, it doesn't buy happiness, but it helps you be financially stable, right? To provide for some of those things that you need to live, right?
Yes, sir. It does. It most definitely does. No, so you touched briefly on investments. We got a thrift savings plan. We got different IRAs, whether it be Roth IRA, traditional IRAs, or creating passive income. Does the Army as a program that bring people in to talk about the different ways of generating passive income to make our soldiers more financially prepared?
No, we don't put an emphasis on that. Now all the military has the blended retirement system, right? There's no longer the high 3 retirement that exists out there. We have started on a path of helping people understand what investments look like, but I still don't believe there's enough education and enough emphasis put on that to help soldiers make the best informed decisions when it comes to what investments look like. And again, occasionally you may go to your Army community service and speak to them about, hey, can we bring in a financial planner or speaker to come to my organization? A lot of times those aren't received as well because this is mandatory training I have to go to, right? We don't bring it up as, hey, this is setting you up for success. Now, not everybody has that same mentality. Some people are like, yeah, I'm all about it. But a lot of the ways that people come into the Army, right, young, they're not thinking about finances. They're not thinking about financial readiness. They're not thinking about investments and passive income like that. And it's generally through word of mouth, right, between somebody like you and I. Hey, man, have you thought about this idea of passive income, of potentially buying real estate here and renting that house out at some point in time? When you leave that duty station, you can potentially have houses all over that are being managed by a property management company. I have a friend who has 6 or 7 houses throughout the world. And I just have a property management company manage those. And all I do is just receive the passive income from it. Right. But we don't speak that way. We generally don't. We don't have those conversations, and senior leaders don't have those conversations either because it's not something that we're focused on. We're focused on lethality and readiness. Are you ready to go to combat? Are you ready to go to war? Is your family prepared to deal without you being home for a long time? It's not, hey, do you have any investments? You won't hear in a day-to-day conversation, you won't hear anybody talk about TSP. It's just not. It's not something that people talk about because it's not something that we're focused on. So.
No, that is a great point. Our mission is to be ready when our nation is least prepared.
That's right.
And that's a focus, and definitely have its place. And it's really important because that's the reason why we serve, right? That's our purpose. So it's a good thing. So now, any closing thoughts before we get into the focus round, Jason, for our senior leaders who are transitioning from the military? Maybe a few more pointers of how to eliminate anxiety and fear, or fear and anxiety.
Yeah. So first, it really comes down to having a plan, understanding what outside looks like, finding mentors that are outside. There are a lot. Utilize your network, develop one. Okay. LinkedIn is a great resource, but it's not the only resource. There are many other resources out there that exist besides just LinkedIn. If you're not into social media, that's totally fine. But have a plan and then prepare. Having a plan and then failing to enact it is just like not having a plan at all. Right. So have a plan. And then we're very good at planning, preparing, and executing in the military. We're very good at looking at that endpoint, right? That endpoint for me is coming this year, 1 October. That is the endpoint for me. What does it look like to backwards plan everything into that? Whether it's going through a skill bridge type of internship, whether it's looking for another career or a profession? Do you want to do something similar to what you were doing in the Army? If you have a very technical craft, if you're a mechanic, if you're a medical professional, do you want to go and do that on the outside? And if that's not something you want to do, what is it you want to do, right? Sit down and have that hard conversation, not with just yourself, but with your family. What do we want to do when we get out? And for some people, they don't have families, and that's totally fine. Again, define that. We're very good at doing that in the military. We're very good at looking at it. And so what I would say is, what is your next objective? In the military, we know what the next objective is.
Yes.
We know how to plan and get there. The next objective is retirement. So how do we plan and get there? And then reach out to your network, your relationships. The resources the military provides are there. Go utilize them. You can go to the transition assistance program classes over and over again. All of those people are professionals that are there to help prepare you for the next step. But nobody's going to do it for you.
Yes.
Nobody owes you anything. Nobody owes you anything. You have to want to do it. You have to want to go out there and get it. So use that discipline, that perseverance, that drive that we've instilled within you as a soldier, as a Marine, as a sailor, as an airman, as a coastie, as a guardian. Use those tools that we've given you to look at your next objective and go get it.
Go get it. Yeah. Often tell folks that we tend to not do something until it becomes important to us.
Yeah.
And one of the things that has to happen, the uniform has to come off at one point,
right.
whether it's 20 years or 30 plus years. So it has to come off. And it's really important that we always prepping for a transition to whenever that time comes, it's a seamless process or a easier process, especially if we have family. So Jason, really appreciate you for the knowledge that you imparted on us today. We're going to go into the focus round. So, Jason, what do you do for fun?
I'm big into fitness. I love going to the gym. Right now, because I've been separated from my family for just a little under a year now, I spend a lot of time in the gym. I go out and go running. I like to go mountain biking a lot. When I'm with my family, it's just spending time with my children. Whatever my son and daughter want to do. We have a 40-acre farm in Texas, and we just go hang out on the land. My kids love to climb trees. I'm out there with them. I'm not as young as I used to be. I'll be 48 here pretty soon. But that doesn't mean I can't get out there and do everything that they can do. We like to, me and my family are big in the outdoors. We like to go hiking. We like to go camping. I like to go to lakes. My children love to fish. They love to go kayaking. And so for me, the joy that my hobbies are my family. That's really, my hobby is my family. Now, I have other things I like to do. I like to shoot. I'm a big shooter. I like to go to the range, and I have a small range on my land where I can just go out and shoot and spend an hour just throwing rounds down range at steel targets and just focusing on what maybe the next day is going to have, and it gives me the opportunity to do that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's my thing is family.
So that's great. Now, one of the things I think we need to clarify is separation and the thought process behind that. You say you and your family are separated now. Can you clarify that for our listeners?
Yes. About 10 years ago, we bought 40 acres in Texas, in East Texas, and we decided, hey, this is where we're going to go to retire. And about this time last year, my wife and my children, they really wanted to be settled. And we made the decision to retire. We already knew we were going to, but I officially put my paperwork in February of last year for an October retirement of this year. And then that kind of set, again,
the plan.
And so we set the plan in motion. The next step was to get my family down to Texas so that they could get the house ready. Because we had already built our house too. We built a house in 2017, right after my daughter was born. And my wife said, I'm going to go get the house ready. I want to make it a home. I want to make sure that everything is there. We have 2 dogs. We have cats. A lot of that stuff is hard to do in just a short amount of time. Right. Again, if you're planning on retirement and making it happen in the next year, that may be too short of a time frame for you, especially for your family. So we made the conscious decision that my family would go ahead, prepare the home for me, right? Do what we call AFO, Advanced Force Operations, right? Expeditionary operations to get there, to set the conditions for retirement and for my next career out of the military. And then I would finish up everything that I was doing here, going home to visit them. It's been hard. I'm not gonna lie. It's not been the easiest thing for my wife and for my children, but modern technology, FaceTime, the ability to pick up the phone and call has allowed us to do a lot of things. And my children are homeschooled as well, just like I was. We have chosen to homeschool our children, and my wife enjoys that. That's something that my wife relishes in the ability to teach our children herself and to show them how to live off of the land, to start our farm, our garden, and things like that. So that's why we separated in that purpose, so that I could finish out my time in the military to get us where we wanted to be financially, and also for my wife to prepare the home for me when I get there.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people is not willing to make that sacrifice. But to your point earlier, is having the communication in the family of the decision of all the decision. This is what we're going to
Right.
do, and we're doing this for the families. That is awesome. So, Jason, what is one opportunity that was a game changer for you?
Early on, I was selected to be in a special operations organization. In my career, I was a young E5 sergeant, and I received a random phone call. This is back in 2002. Hey, I want you to come out and select to assess for this organization. And that was a game changer for me, because in that organization that I lived in for a very long time, I learned what it meant to be your own driving force. Nobody was going to push me to be there. It was a volunteer. Nobody was going to push me. And I cultivated over years the ability to drive myself. We had a quote that was on the wall in our organization, in a lot of the bathrooms, a lot of the latrines. This quote was hanging over the toilets. And it said, "Nobody here is going to drive you, because the men that need to be driven aren't worth driving. You will drive yourself." And so that was a game changer for me. It allowed me the opportunity to focus on the pursuit of excellence. And it also opened up many doors for me later on in my career. So that for me was a game changer.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So,
Yeah.
what is your most important communication tip?
Communicate often. Bad news doesn't get better over time, right?
Yeah.
Communicate often. I tell people this all the time. In the military, we do not have a problem with over communication. We have a problem with under communication or miscommunication. But generally speaking, you don't have somebody who said, "Hey, you told me too many times." No, that is probably, when it comes to something that I tell people to do, communicate often. The status of where you're at, what your plan is. And so for me and my family, I communicate often to them. Hey, here's what's next. Here's where we're going. Here's what's going to happen next. And for the people that I lead, it's here's what's next. And vision, strategy needs to be communicated often, because a lot of times the person doing the work at the bottom,
Right.
they don't know where we're going, right?
Facts.
They can't see the vision of the strategy. And so as a senior leader in the Army, one of my obligations is to translate strategic guidance down to the tactical level and say, here's why what you're doing is important. This is why what you do matters. This is you in the grand scheme of things. And I think that helps people understand. It provides unity of effort because we have a shared understanding in what we're doing.
Yeah. Facts. So, what is one thing you wish you understood earlier?
Oh, probably finances. I will tell you that. Yeah. I think, again, the Army doesn't do a good job of helping us, but that doesn't mean that it was the Army's fault. It was my fault, to be clear. And had I known about certain things sooner, TSP, and again, I knew about TSP a long time ago, but had I known about the rewards that come from financial readiness, it could have potentially allowed me to either retire sooner or be more financially ready for what I want to do next. Not that I'm not ready now, but that I would have had a better understanding of something. Yeah.
Right. So we talk about several different levels of your career and some of the people have been important to you, but and also some of the opportunities that you have had. But for you, in summary, to what do you attribute your success?
Oh, first off, to God, I will tell you 100%. He has provided me and blessed me with so many opportunities over my career to give me the ability to serve. I will say that's a lot of how I got here. I wouldn't have got here without much prayer and without a faith in a purpose bigger than myself. And then also belonging to the best team in the United States, which is the United States Army. This is the best team that I think anybody could ever join, right? The military in general, but for me, it's the Army. Being a part of an organization that has affected such change upon not just the country, but the youth in the country. You will see people come into the military and leave changed people, right? They have discipline, motivation. They have a work ethic that is unmatched generally out there in the civilian world. And they have a level of tenacity, the grit, the ability to go through such levels of discomfort and pain to be able to accomplish what they want. And being part of that team has been probably one of the greatest blessings of my life. next to having a family.
I love it. I love it. I often say the different branches of military, different team, same fight.
Yeah, exactly.
So love it. Yeah,
Yeah,
we all have our own avenues of approach, and we definitely are necessary for the protection of the luxury that we enjoy in this great country.
that's
So
right.
I appreciate your 29 years of service, brother. So now you talk about a few different organizations that can assist with
Mhm.
transitioning. So as we close out this podcast, can you touch on some of those touch on some of those different organizations? And also, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, yeah. The one that I'm a part of is I'm a fellow in the Special Operators Transition Foundation. It was created over a decade ago to help people from the special operations community find purpose and transition into a career in civilian life. There are other ones. The Honor Foundation is another great one. Hiring Our Heroes is another phenomenal program that I've heard people find nothing but just come out of those that have been selected and have the opportunity to participate in their programs. These are all nonprofit programs that are started either by veterans or by civilian organizations to enable veterans to transition smoothly into civilian life. Because again, fear and trepidation abounds. That it's taken me a long time, but I realize that light at the end of the tunnel isn't a car coming at me.
It's good.
That light at the end of the tunnel is civilian life, right? And for a long time, you don't realize, is that the way I'm supposed to go? And so there are so many people that have gone before me. And so I tell people to lean on that. If people want to if I can help somebody transition, again, I'm in the middle of transition myself, but I can always help point people in the right direction. I have such a vast network that I've created, and that people have allowed me to join their network to understand what it means to transition. But yeah, you can reach out to me through LinkedIn, and that is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me, much like the way that you got a hold of me. And I respond generally as soon as I can to anybody's direct message or a post or something like
Yeah. So greatly appreciate you joining us today, Jason. So thank you for listening to another episode of the Multifamily Real Estate Experiment Podcast. I'm Hutch, the Marine Investor. Out.
that. All right. Thanks, Hutch. Appreciate it,
Bye now.
man.